They said a barren woman sours the rain, so they made a lesson of me in daylight. Rope on the post, backs politely turned so no one looked too hungry for it. I counted swallows and told my body to be a house with no windows. The first lash took my breath. By the 30th my voice was gone. At the 100th I was quiet again, not brave emptied. "And that'll do," someone said, like a fence fixed. They cut me loose and dragged me to the river. Let the water carry the curse. Boots shuffled mud, cooled my cheek. The water took the light and gave it back. If I could hold on till sundown, I told myself I might become a reed or a rock, anything but a woman who disappointed a grave. My name is Naomi. I am a widow. I never gave my husband a child. In Greyun, that is not sorrow, but sin. I kept one small thing. I didn't cry. I heard him before I saw him, branches slapping, breath hard, a man calling Ruth, and straining for answer. He broke through the brush and nearly stepped on me. Dust in his beard, a crease between. His eyes. "God," he said softly, "who did this?" My mouth remembered one sentence. I didn't cry. He shrugged off his coat and laid it over me. "Reuben Cain," he said. "My girl's ribbon blew this way." He crouched, shadowing. My face. "Can you stand?" "Not yet," I said, and the honesty hurt worse than the rope. He decided before he spoke. His arms went under me. The sky tipped. Pain opened its teeth, and I kept mine shut. He called for Ruth, then for Eli and Thomas. 2 boys pounded up the path, a little girl behind them, gripping half a blue ribbon. "Fetch the cart," he told the boys. "Ruthie, bring the blanket." Her hand steadied the moment they touched work. I waited for him to do what decent men do, carry pity, to shade and leave it there. Instead, he took me past the fork toward neighbors who would bar their doors at the sight of me. He carried me to a low cabin with a clean porch and a pair of empty shoes under a bench. Waiting on feet that would never come dot at the threshold, he paused. "My Mary's been gone 3 winters," he said. "We keep her room ready so we don't get hard." He shouldered the door. Warmth rose, stove ticking, Bible open, children's drawings pinned to a beam. Ordinary, therefore miraculous. He laid me on a bed that smelled of soap and thyme. Shame moved through me, old and useless. He saw it and didn't look away. "You're safe here," he said. "I won't ask anything but breathing." He set water by my hand. "Doctor, if you want him. If not, we make do." "You don't know my name," I whispered. "I'll learn it," he said. "Naomi." He nodded like he'd known. Outside, a boy whooped. The sound reached me, real. He pulled a chair close. "I found you by the river," he said. "I didn't carry you to town. I carried you home. Some sentences are doors. That one opened. I kept the coat on my shoulders. I let the blanket be heavy. I let my eyes close without fear of what came next. They had tried to make me a curse the river could wash away. In his arms I was a person again, heavy enough to be held. Because he chose, I did too. I chose to live until morning. Asterisk. The first thing I woke to was the smell of broth. Not the kind they used to serve widows in town, thin water, with a scrap of bone, but rich with onion and thyme. I opened my eyes to find a little girl standing at the foot of the bed, hair in braids, clutching a spoon like it was a sword. "Pa says you got to eat," she declared. My throat worked, but no sound came. She crept forward, set the bowl on the table, and whispered, "I'm Ruth. That's my ma's quilt. Pa says it keeps away bad dreams." She smoothed a corner of it over me before darting out, calling for her brothers. I shifted and felt pain. Bloom everywhere. The lashes had scabbed, fire on my back each time I moved. My ribs ached where boots had pressed. But the air in this room was warm. The walls smelled of cedar and bread. Shame prickled worse than the wounds lying in another. Woman's bed beneath her quilt, taking kindness I hadn't earned. Reuben entered quietly, setting his hat on the chair. "Morning, Naomi," he said like we'd been neighbors all our lives. "Eat what you can. Ruth'll pout if you don't." He poured water from a jug into a tin cup and held it out. His hands were rough, nicked from rope and blade, but steady. I drank until I coughed, then pushed the cup away. "You should have left me," I rasped. "They'll come for me again. They'll say you harbor a curse." He leaned back, arms crossed. "My children don't eat curses. They eat stew. You'll help me see to it once you're strong." His tone left no room for refusal. That night, Ruth curled beside me without asking, whispering questions until she fell asleep mid-sentence. Her hair tickled my arm. Her breathing warmed the quilt. For the first time in years, I wasn't alone. I cried then silently, careful not to wake her, but it wasn't the cry of shame they'd expected. It was the cry of someone aching to belong. Days passed. The boys carried buckets of water. Ruth brought wildflowers, and Reuben kept watch with an ease that unsettled me more than anger ever had. He treated me as if my existence required no explanation. Yet guilt gnawed. I couldn't be dead weight, a body to be fed and pitied. I insisted on rising, on sweeping the hearth, though pain bent me double. Reuben caught me once, broom in hand. Trembling, he took it from me gently. "Your fight isn't with dust, not yet, but I needed to prove something. I'm not just a burden," I snapped, his eyes soft. "Then be patient. Healing is work, too." That night I wept again, but quietly, where no one could hear. I grieved my barrenness, my lost husband, the years of being less than. Yet beneath the grief, something stirred tiny as embers in ash. A warmth I'd nearly forgotten, the faint ache of belonging. When the morning came, I found Ruth waiting with a comb. She tugged at my hair until it lay smooth. "Now you look like family," she said with a grin. And for the first time in years, I almost believed her dot asterisk. By the 5th day I could cross the room without seeing stars. Ruth's ribbon hung on a peg, blue against cedar. Reuben mended a harness. The boys whispered about kindling. The house sounded like peace. Word runs faster than water. By sundown, men loitered at our fence to stare. At the pump, a woman pulled. Her child closed and muttered a prayer. The butcher's boy flicked a warding sign. I folded the same towel until my hands went still. That night the wind fell. A hound barked far, then near, then stopped. Reuben lowered the lamp. "Boys, Ruthie, pantry, blankets. Not a peep unless it's fire." I turned toward Mary's room, then stopped. Fear wanted me small. Hiding had never saved me. I faced the door. Boot steps in the yard. A fist on the frame, not quite a knock. Another flat as a shovel. Reuben lifted the latch but didn't bar it. He touched the poker, set it back, chose a lantern instead. "Stay behind me," he said. "I'm not hiding," I answered. He opened the door. 3 men stood with hats low, lanterns throwing honey light on hard faces. The middle one held a coil of rope. One wore a badge like law you button on when convenient. "Evening, Cain," the badge said. "We heard you took in company." "Evening." "Sheriff," Reuben replied. "You heard right. She's under my roof." The rope man rolled the line. "Folks say she brings a blight. Ain't wise to keep trouble by your young uns." "I have a blight," I said. "It's called surviving. What your town did." Their eyes snapped to me. I stepped up until my shoulder met Reuben's. "She was judged," the rope man said. "She was punished," the sheriff corrected. "She was nearly murdered," Reuben said. calm as a winter creek. And she's staying? You plan to stand. Use off with kitchen light? The rope man sneered. Light helps men see what they are, Reuben said. If you came to take a woman from my house, do it with your faces lit. The sheriff cleared his throat. We only aim to bring her to the church. Speak on prudence. I spoke to God on the ground, I said. He answered with a man and 3 children. That's prudence enough. A tongue of wind leaned thee. Flame and set it right. Reuben raised his lantern. If you set foot in my house for her, he murmured, you'll find me in your path. If you come for my children, you won't find me at all. I'll be out hunting. He didn't sound like bluster. The sheriff chose retreat and called it mercy. We'll speak again, he said, and turned. The rope man spat and followed. When the dark swallowed them, Reuben let out the breath he'd been holding. You all right? No, I said, but I am standing. He studied me like a carpenter judging a beam and nodded. Good. Inside, Ruth flew from the pantry and rapped me fierce. The boys spilled out, bragging about the knife they hadn't used. We laughed, thin but real. Out there, the road held more footsteps. And here, the room learned my shape beside. Reuben. I set my hand on his scarred table and decided again. I would not be dragged anywhere ever again. If I moved, it would be by walking beside the man who carried me from the river. Morning brought no peace. The air in Greyun thickened whenever I walked its streets. Reuben needed flour and nails, so I told him I would go. He frowned, but I steadied my voice. If I'm to live here, I must face them. Ruth's small hand found mine, her braid bouncing as we stepped down the road together. The market square tilted its eyes toward us. Women bent over apples that didn't need picking. Men stopped mid-word, chewing silence. I felt their judgment crawl across my back, hot as the lash had been. Ruth squeezed tighter Dot at the butcher's stall. Mr. Kessler hefted his cleaver. We don't serve curses, he said loud enough for the whole row. His breath stank of beer and pride that my throat dried, but I made myself meet his eyes. Better men than you have tried, I said. My voice was even, though my knees shook. A snicker rippled through the crowd. Then silence. He slammed the cleaver into the block, but I didn't flinch. Ruth tugged me away, her chin high like she had learned it from me. We gathered what we needed elsewhere, cornmeal from Mrs. Holly, who handed it over without a word, nails from a peddler too new to know the story. But each step back through town felt like walking under stones ready to drop Dot at the well. A knot of women whispered behind their palms. One spat on the ground, another muttered a prayer. Ruth stared at them, then whispered to me, You don't have to listen. The words undid me more than the spit did. I squeezed her hand so tight she winced, and I let go quick, ashamed. When we returned home, Reuben was chopping wood. He saw my face and set the axe aside. You held, he said simply. That was all. No pity, no sermon, just recognition. That night, when the children slept, I sat by the fire and let the silence stretch. Reuben sipped coffee from a tin cup. Finally, I spoke. They'll never stop. He set the cup down. They stopped tonight. They'll come harder. Then we'll stand harder. The way he said we burned through me more than any cruelty could. Still, when I lay down under Mary's quilt, the shame pressed in again, whispering I was unworthy of his roof, his children's trust, his simple loyalty. I bit my knuckle to keep from sobbing Dot, but in the morning, Ruth plaited my hair and declared, Now you look like family again. And when I stepped onto the porch, the sky stretched wide and bright, daring me to believe her. I chose not to run. I chose to stay. Even if the town spit fire, I would stand in it. My dignity was all they couldn't take, and beside the Cain family I would not bow. Asterisk, the night they lit the barn, the horses screamed me awake. Reuben was already up, the boys. At his heels, I grabbed Ruth and ran. We formed a line from the pump, passing buckets until our arms failed. Sparks fell like hateful stars. When the ridge beam groaned, Reuben dragged us back. The roof dropped, a red mouth swallowing hay tools. And a winter we hadn't met yet by first light, only black ribs of timber stood. On our front door, and something dark that wasn't paint, someone had drawn a crooked wreath and scrawled scripture, twisted to spite. Barren makes barren. Begone. Reuben's jaw set. Eli spit on the mark. Ruth whispered, "Don't look." Shame reads to you, even when you shut the book. Near noon the sheriff arrived with 3 churchmen, and behind them Wade Lockett in a fine hat with a cheap sole. He smiled like a cat at a crippled bird. "Terrible business," the sheriff said. "Dry season. 1 spark? 1 match," Reuben said. Wade tipped his hat toward me. "Cain, you harbor rot spreads. You got children." "She has." "A name," Reuben answered. "Name or not," Wade said. "She's a drought you brought." He let his gaze slide over the boys, then Ruth. "Might be mercy we aim, keeping your young safe." "We make our own mercy," I said, surprised at my steadiness. "And we pay for our own winter. Keep your hands off both." The sheriff fussed at his badge. "Best you move along, miss. Ease the town." Reuben looked at me in the chard. "Light. If you want out, I'll hitch the team. Dry Creek. My sister will take you. It's your say. Leaving meant their safety. Staying meant worse than paint next time." I felt Mary's quilt around my shoulders, Ruth's sleeping weight. Against my arm, Eli's teasing, Thomas's lopsided whistle at chores. I had been a woman nobody claimed. Now 4 voices said my name like it belonged here. "I won't fold," I said. "I'll stand." Reuben turned to Wade. "You heard her. This is her house. Try to move her, you go through me." They left, not because they feared us, but because there were more days to make trouble in. That evening, ash still in the yard, I washed smoke from my hair and stepped into Mary's room. I set my folded dress in her drawer. Reuben stood in the doorway, hat in his hands as if at church. "It's time," I said. "If I'm here, I'm here." We went to the porch, the sky wide and watching. Ruth brought a string of wildflowers. Eli had hammered 2 wire rings from a nail. Thomas fetched the Bible. Reuben took my hands. "No law will bless this," he said, "but truth will." He spoke vows in plain words: feed, guard, listen, laugh when laughter is hard, and I spoke mine back. The boys slid the ring on 2. My finger. Ruth looped flowers at my wrist. We kissed once, not long, not shy either. The house seemed to take a new shape around us, as if it had been waiting. Greyun wouldn't write our names in any book, but heaven hears porch vows like thunder. That night I lay in Mary's bed without shame, a wife by word and witness, not permission. The ashes would cool. The door would be scrubbed clean. And where everyone swore nothing could grow, peace began to root, stubborn, bright, alive. Asterisk, they didn't let us keep peace long. First it was the milk pails gone sour, overnight, though the cows were sound. Then Ruth found a rag doll stuffed with ash on the porch, its stitched mouth torn open. The boys found words carved into the trough. "She will cost you all. Every cruelty." Was meant to crawl under our skin, to whisper at night. Reuben nailed boards over the trough and burned the doll. I washed the soot off Ruth's hands until she smiled again. But the message was clear. Wade Lockett hadn't finished. One evening Reuben didn't come back from town. I paced the porch till the moon rose. Then a riderless mule stumbled into the yard, reins trailing, dark stains on its flank. Eli caught it, his face white. I saddled my mare before sense could stop me. "Stay with the children," I told the boys. Ruth clung to my skirts, but I pried her loose. "Your pay needs me." The town square flickered with torches. Wade had. Reuben on his knees, blood down his face, hands tied. Men crowded close, the sheriff looking anywhere but at justice. "Cain thinks he can spit on Greyun," Wade drawled. "Thinks he can bed down with the curse that emptied our cribs." He yanked Reuben's hair back, forcing his eyes to me as I rode in. Here she is, the barren witch herself. The crowd parted, hungry for my shame. My knees shook in the saddle, but I forced my voice out steady. "You failed to bury me, Wade. I'm the woman you whipped and left by the river. And I came back stronger." A hush fell. Reuben's gaze burned into mine, pride under pain. Wade shoved him forward. "Beg me, Naomi, maybe I'll spare him." My throat was dust, but fear had no seat left in me. I dismounted slow, boots striking hard on the planks. "I begged the night you held the lash. I begged God." He answered with Cain and his children. "You? You're just noise in the dark." The sheriff muttered something about order, but Wade's face darkened. He raised his hand, knife glinting. I stepped closer, close enough to smell his sweat. "Strike me again if you dare, but know this, every lash made me less afraid. You can't kill what's already been to the river and back." For a moment silence ruled. Then Reuben spoke, voice raw but strong. "Let her go, Wade. You'll find no fear here." I turned my back on Wade and lifted Reuben by the arm. My hands shook, but I didn't let them see. Together we walked out through the crowd, not fast, not flinching. No one stopped us. No one dared. When we reached the edge of town, Reuben staggered, leaning heavy against me. "You shouldn't have come," he whispered. "I had to," I said. "I won't let them write my story again." He laughed, though it hurt him. "Naomi Cain," he said, as if tasting the name. "You've got more fight than 10 men." I held him steady under the starlight, the torches fading behind us. Wade's threats still echoed, but something louder had begun. My own voice no longer broken. Asterisk. Greyun called it an inquiry, but it was a trial in everything but name. Wade stood tall beside the sheriff, smirking as if the gallows were already built. The church bell tolled noon, and the whole town gathered, some curious, some hungry. For blood, some only afraid to stay away. Reuben walked stiffly beside me, ribs bound, face bruised, his hand brushing mine like an oath. The preacher opened with a prayer for wisdom. Wade interrupted before the amen, his voice oily. "We stand here 'cause one woman curses this town. She was judged, punished, left to the river. But Cain dragged her back, and since then we've had fire, spoil, and strife. You've seen it. You've lived it." Murmurs swelled. I felt their eyes sear me. My knees trembled, but I planted my feet. When the preacher finally gave me the floor, I raised my chin. "You want to hear what I brought on this town? I'll tell you. I brought scars." I turned, pulling my shawl down enough to show the whip marks, healed but living. Gasps rippled. 100 lashes for a wound that never quickened. 100 lashes for something I never chose. The crowd hushed. I let the silence ache before I spoke again. They left me by the river, but I lived, and I came back. I cook bread, mend clothes, teach a little girl to braid her hair. That's my curse, surviving. Wade spat. Lies, she's barren, useless, a blight on every field. My voice did not shake. I am a wife. I am a mother by choice, not blood. I am what you could not destroy. The preacher stepped forward, eyes blazing. Enough, Wade. This woman speaks truth. A handful of townsfolk nodded Mrs. Hawley, who had given me cornmeal, the peddler who sold me nails, even the butcher's boy, eyes wide with shame. The sheriff fumbled. Now, but Reuben's voice cut through, low and steady. You think you whipped the curse out of her? What you whipped out was your own decency. You tried to kill her, and you nearly killed this town's soul. A murmur rose, louder this time. Two men moved from the crowd, seizing Wade's arms. He thrashed, cursing, but iron cuffs clamped shut. The sheriff blustered, but the preacher's word held heavier. Wade shouted after me as they dragged him away. You'll never belong, Naomi. You'll never be more than dirt. I turned, meeting his rage with calm. Dirt grows things. You only burn. The crowd parted, not with scorn, but with something I hadn't felt in years. Respect, or maybe shame turned into respect. I stood there breathing, the weight of lashes, whispers, and fire lifting like smoke on the wind. When Reuben's hand closed around mine, it was not to steady me, but to stand beside me. Together we walked out, heads high, leaving Wade in chains. And the town forced to see what had been true all along. I was no curse. I was the proof that cruelty does not have the final word. Months passed like seasons breaking free of drought. The barn rose again with fresh beams, each nail driven by. Reuben's hand and mine beside his. The children laughed in the hayloft as if fire had never touched it. My days filled with small things that felt like miracles kneading bread, teaching Ruth and the neighbor girls to sew stitches straight and strong, mending shirts with thread. Bright as hope dot the town that once spat at my shadow now lowered their eyes in uneasy respect. Some still crossed the street, but others nodded. Mrs. Howell brought sugar. The peddler brought fabric scraps, and even the butcher gave Ruth a sweet one morning, without words. Their repentance was clumsy, but I accepted it for what it was. Start of change. One afternoon a letter arrived. The handwriting stopped my breath. My sister Clara. We had not spoken since our mother's death, when she cast me out as barren and cursed. The letter asked me home, said she was tired of silence. My hands trembled as I read it by lamplight. I went. Reuben hitched the wagon. The children waved as we creaked down the road. At my mother's grave I laid wildflowers and whispered the words I had once swallowed. I am not your shame. I am your daughter. Clara stood beside me, stiff at first, then softening. Tears blurred the hard lines of her face. We embraced like two women who had survived different storms. Not healed all at once, but mending. When I returned, the Cain cabin no longer felt borrowed. It was mine. The children ran to me shouting, "Ma!" and I gathered them all. That night on the porch where vows had been spoken, I told Reuben, "I couldn't carry life in my womb, so God placed it in my hands." His answer was a silence full of reverence, the kind that speaks louder than words. I looked at the land-charred fields greening again, stars burning fierce above. I had been whipped, abandoned, spat upon, nearly erased. Yet here I stood, whole. Wife, mother, matriarch, survivor. Greyun would remember me not as a curse, but as a woman who would not vanish, no matter how many times they tried.